With that, Mr. President, I move that the Senate proceed out of order to take up consideration of resolutions at this time.
The motion is to proceed out of order to take up consideration of resolutions. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes having the motion is adopted, and the Senate will proceed out of order to take up those resolutions. Consideration of resolutions. Will the clerk please read the title to SJR 008?
SJR 8 by Senators Fields and Buckner and Representatives Harrod and Exum concerning recognition of African American veterans.
Senator Buckner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that SJR 21-008 be, I move resolution 21-008 and ask that it be read at length.
Will the clerk please read at length?
Senate Joint Resolution 8 by Senators Fields and Buckner and Representatives Harrod and Exum concerning recognition of African American veterans. Whereas the military history of African Americans spans the arrival of the first enslaved Africans during the colonial history of the United States to the present day, and whereas African Americans have participated in every war fought by or within the United States, including the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, the Mexican-American War, the Civil War, the Spanish-American War, the Indian Wars, World Wars I and II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Gulf War, and the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. And whereas nearly 198,000 African American soldiers served during the Civil War, roughly 350,000 African American soldiers served during World War I, and another 1.2 million African American soldiers served during World War II, with many more African Americans serving in the years since World War II. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the 73rd General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives are concurring herein, that we, the General Assembly, in recognition of the heroic efforts and great sacrifice of African American veterans, hereby encourage this commemoration throughout the Senate and House of Representatives.
Senator Buckner.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to give you some basic information about why we should recognize African American veterans. 1.2 million Black men enlisted during the Second World War, a display of commitment to and faith in America that is as moving as it is mind-boggling. Initially, these men were barred from combat and instead assigned to service duties such as cleaning latrines and cleaning quarters. Well, why am I telling you this? Black soldiers stationed at military bases in the segregated South were forbidden from eating in restaurants that opened their doors to German prisoners of war. Many more soon realized that the GI Bill had been constructed in such a way that most of its benefits, including mortgage support, college tuition, and business loans, could be denied to them. Regardless, African American men still continued to enlist and serve their country with pride. I'm telling you this story so we never forget our past and that we can do better in the future. Thank you.
Members, just as a reminder, we will vote on each of these so that we can send them to the House and then come back and open up discussion in general. With that, having no further discussion on Senate Joint Resolution 008, are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Joint Resolution 008 is passed. Co-sponsors. Senator Buckner.
Mr. President, I would like to add the Senate as co-sponsors for this resolution.
Seeing no objection, the current roll call will be added as co-sponsors on Senate Joint Resolution 008. Will the clerk please read the title to SJR 009?
SJR 9 by Senators Kolker and Liston, Representatives Young and Carver concerning honoring Colorado veterans of the 76th anniversary of the end of World War II.
Senator Liston.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move Senate Joint Resolution 21-009 and ask that it be read at length, if that's okay.
Will the clerk please read at length Senate Joint Resolution 009?
Senate Joint Resolution 9 by Senators Colker and Liston and Representatives Young and Carver concerning honoring Colorado veterans on the 76th anniversary of the end of World War II. Whereas during the years 1941 to 1945, some 250,000 of Colorado's sons and daughters served in World War II. And of that number, over 3,500 were killed in action or from wounds suffered on the battlefield. And whereas of the 3,586 Coloradoans who gave the last full measure of devotion, offering their lives so that others might live freely, over half never came home. Their remains unrecovered or buried in American military cemeteries around the world. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the 73rd General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that we, the General Assembly, in recognition of the heroic efforts and great sacrifices of World War II veterans from Colorado and across the United States, hereby recognize this commemoration of the 76th anniversary of the end of World War II and encourage support throughout the Senate and House of Representatives.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the motion before the body is the passage of Senate Joint Resolution 008. Are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Joint Resolution 009 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senator Liston.
Thank you, Mr. President. If it's okay, I ask that the current roll call be added as co-sponsors.
Seeing no objection, the current roll call will be added as co-sponsors on Senate Joint Resolution 009. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Joint Resolution 010?
Senate Joint Resolution 10 concerning honoring Gold Star families by Senators Donovan and Woodward and Representatives Ortiz and Geithner.
Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Joint Resolution 10 concerning honoring Gold Star families and ask that portions be read at length.
Will the clerk please read selected portions of Senate Joint Resolution 10?
Senate Joint Resolution 10 by Senators Donovan and Woodward and Representatives Ortiz and Geithner concerning honoring Gold Star families. Whereas since the Revolutionary War, more than 1 million American soldiers have died in battle and military conflicts. Their families who have endured these losses and the accompanying grief are known as Gold Star families. And whereas named for the practice of families hanging service banners in the windows of their homes with a star for each family member in the United States, deep blue stars were displayed for each living member serving, and they were replaced with gold if their loved one lost his or her life serving our country and protecting our freedom. Whereas while national monuments and memorials serve as strong visible reminders for the men and women who made the ultimate sacrifice in service to our nation, Gold Star families are a living legacy of each fallen soldier and can help us remember and honor those heroes by name. Whereas long after the battles have ended, as our stars and stripes of liberty fly, the families who have at home a folded flag and an empty seat at the table deserve our respect and our support. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the 73rd General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that we, the members of the General Assembly, honor the pride and pain of the parents and partners and children and siblings of our fallen heroes and recognize the families of these proud patriots with an expression of profound gratitude and respect.
Having no further discussion, the motion before the body is the passage of Senate Joint Resolution 010. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Senate Joint Resolution 010 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senator Woodward.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask that the current roll call be added as co-sponsors.
Seeing no objection, the current roll call will be added as co-sponsors on Senate Joint Resolution 10010. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Joint Resolution 011?
SJR 11 by Senator Story and Quorum Representative Sullivan Caitlin concerning the recognition of remembrance of military veterans in Colorado who served in the Vietnam War.
Senator Story.
Thank you, Mr. President. Military Appreciation Day is always one of my favorite days of the legislative session.
Would the good senator from Evergreen please?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Joint Resolution 21-011.
Is there any discussion? Senator Story.
Thank you, Mr. President. Military Appreciation Day is always one of my favorite days of the legislative session. Today, we all come together to recognize and honor and express our deep gratitude for all the brave men and women who have answered the call of service for our great country. This year, I'm saddened that we are unable to welcome our veterans to the building to thank them in person, but to all those watching at home, I cannot express enough how grateful I am for your great commitment and sacrifice to our nation. As I have shared from this podium before, I grew up in a military family. My father was a career Army officer and a decorated pilot who flew helicopters in Korea and Vietnam. In Vietnam, he flew troops into the front lines and broken soldiers back to camp. One day when he was flying on a mission, his chopper took on enemy fire and he was wounded. My dad was honored with a Purple Heart and a Distinguished Flying Cross. After returning home from brutal combat in the jungles, swamps, and rice paddies of Vietnam, our veterans all too often were unappreciated and mistreated. Today, the average age of our Vietnam veterans is over 70. Every year, we lose more of our precious veterans. While we still have time, we must do everything in our power to make sure they know just how much we appreciate their dedication and commitment to serve. And I'd like to share just a brief section of the resolution. As the resolution so eloquently states, we must honor their services and sacrifices and express our appreciation for their fortitude, their activism on behalf of fellow veterans, their steadfast patriotism, their many accomplishments and contributions, and the leadership they have shown to their families, community, organizations, and the state.
Members, will continue discussion on this when we come back to it. Will the clerk please read selected portions of this resolution?
Senate Joint Resolution 11 by Senators Story and Quorum and Representatives Sullivan and Caitlin, concerning the recognition and remembrance of military veterans in Colorado who served in the Vietnam War. Whereas the U.S. states military involvement in the Vietnam War began in the Republic of South Vietnam in the 1950s and continued until 1975, involving North Vietnamese regular forces and Viet Cong guerrilla forces in armed conflict with the United States Armed Forces and the Army of the Republic of Vietnam. And whereas during this period, more than 2.7 million American soldiers, both volunteers and draftees, served tours of duty in Vietnam with a total of more than 9 million active duty military personnel in what was an extremely long, difficult, and complex war. And whereas more than 58,220 members of the United States Armed Forces, including 623 Coloradoans, lost their lives in Vietnam, and more than 300,000 members of the United States Armed Forces were wounded. And whereas as American military personnel completed their tours of duty in Vietnam, they returned home to a citizenry that was divided in its opinions of that conflict, and many people failed to distinguish their political and philosophical viewpoints toward the war from the individuals who had served. And whereas in the intervening decades, our citizenry has come to understand more clearly the importance of recognizing and respecting the service of military veterans, regardless of any other opinions or issues. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the 73rd General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that we, the members of the Colorado General Assembly, hereby, 1, honor the service and sacrifices of the military veterans in Colorado who served in Vietnam, including the South Vietnamese soldiers who served alongside American troops. 2, recognize the particular challenges faced by many of these veterans, both while serving in Vietnam and upon returning home. 3, express our appreciation for their fortitude, their activism on behalf of fellow veterans, their steadfast patriotism, their many accomplishments and contributions, and the leadership they have shown in their families, community organizations, and the state. And 4, encourage all Coloradoans to remember the sacrifices made by Vietnam veterans.
Having no further discussion on Senate Joint Resolution 011, are there any no votes? With a vote of 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, Senate Joint Resolution 011 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senator Quorum.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask that the current roll call be added as co-sponsors.
Seeing no objection, the current roll call will be added on as co-sponsors on Senate Joint Resolution 011. Will the clerk please read the title to Senate Joint Resolution 012?
SJR 12 by Senators Patterson, Lundin, Representatives Pico, Max, and Janae, concerning recognition of military veterans and MIA POW Appreciation Day.
Senator Lundin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Joint Resolution 21012 and acknowledge there is an amendment at the desk.
There is an amendment at the desk. Will the clerk please read Amendment L001?
Amendment L001.
Senator Lundin.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Amendment L001.
To the amendment, Senator.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This amendment, members, acknowledges among the various forces that have served and do serve this country that the United States Space Command, in fact, indeed, should also be added to the list, and it is so added to the list with this amendment.
Is there further discussion regarding Amendment L001 to Senate Joint Resolution 012? Seeing none, are there any no votes? With 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, 0 excused, Amendment L001 is adopted. To the resolution, Senator Lundin.
Mr. President, I move or request that certain sections of the resolution be read at length.
Will the clerk please read the selected portions of the Senate resolution?
Senate Joint Resolution 12 by Senators Pedersen and Lundin and Representatives Pico and Michelson Janay concerning recognition of military veterans and MIA POW Appreciation Day. Whereas Colorado has a proud and distinguished history of dedicated military service by men and women of this state whose courage, heroism, and sacrifice preserve the liberties and democratic way of life set forth in our state and federal constitutions. And whereas Colorado is home to a significant number of military installations, including Fort Carson, the United States Air Force Academy, Buckley Air Force Base, Peterson Air Force Base, Shriver Air Force Base, and Cheyenne Mountain Air Force Station, that contribute not only to the national security of our nation, but to the economic health of our state. And whereas in addition to active members of the armed services, Colorado is the proud home of more than 400,000 military veterans who have served their country long and well, and who bring great honor and distinction in the state. And whereas we should also never forget the sacrifices made for us by the 94 service members from Colorado declared missing in action of prisoners of war while defending the principles of liberty and justice in conflicts in Korea, Laos, and Vietnam. And whereas disparate and diverse groups of Coloradoans, such as persons who are African American, Latino or Latina, or Hispanic, in addition to men and women of all backgrounds, are bound together in the United States Armed Services by their selfless dedication to the spirit of our nation, the ideals of freedom and democracy, and the cause of democracy and stability around the globe. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate of the 73rd General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, one, that we, the members of the 73rd General Assembly, hereby extend our heartfelt gratitude to our state's veterans, past and present, to all military men and women currently serving in the armed services, and to family members of active duty personnel and veterans, and that we remember and honor the prisoners of war and those missing in action from previous conflicts. Two, that we express our continued partnership with and support of Fort Carson and maintain our strong commitment to supporting ongoing military training at the Mountain Post. And three, that we encourage the citizens of Colorado to join in the celebration of Colorado's Military Veterans and MIA POW Appreciation Day on April 5th, 2021, in recognition and honor of the thousands of fellow citizens of the military who protect and serve their communities, state, and country.
Having no further discussion on Senate Joint Resolution 012, are there any no votes? With a vote of 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, Senate Joint Resolution 012 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senator Pedersen.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask that the current roll call be added as co-sponsors.
Seeing no objection, the current roll call will be added as co-sponsors on Senate Joint Resolution 012. Will the clerk please read the title, Senator Lundin?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. We are honored, colleagues, to have a Gold Star family with us under the decisive leadership of the President and the agreement of the majority and minority leaders. We are moving towards normalcy. They have joined us on the floor of the Senate today, our first guests, I believe, since the pandemic. I would like to acknowledge Sarah Lindsay and her aunt, Nancy Worthington. They're here today representing Will Lindsay, a Green Beret who fell on 22 March 2019 in Afghanistan, a member of the 10th Special Forces. He was 33 years old and left in the good and able care of his lovely wife, Sarah, 4 daughters. We are honored to have them with us here today. Thank you for being with us here, Sarah and Nancy. Thank you, Mr. President.
Will the clerk please read the title, the Senate Joint Resolution 013?
Senate Joint Resolution 13 by Senators Garcia and Simpson, Representative Escar and Luck concerning the 53rd anniversary of the capture of USS Pueblo by North Korea.
Senator Simpson.
Morning. Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Joint Resolution 21-013 concerning the 53rd anniversary of the capture of the USS Pueblo by North Korea and request a portion of the resolution be read at length.
Will the clerk please read selected portions of Senate Joint Resolution 13?
Senate Joint Resolution 13 by Senators Garcia and Simpson and Representatives Escar and Luck concerning the 53rd anniversary of the capture of the USS Pueblo by North Korea. Whereas the USS Pueblo was originally launched as the United States Army cargo ship in 1944, but was transferred to the United States Navy and renamed the USS Pueblo in 1966. And whereas the USS Pueblo was named for the city of Pueblo, Colorado, and the county of Pueblo, Colorado, and was the third ship in the naval fleet to bear the name of Pueblo. And whereas after leaving Japan in early January 1968 on an intelligence mission, the USS Pueblo was attacked by the North Korean military on January 23, 1968. And whereas, according to United States naval authorities and the crew of the USS Pueblo, the ship was in international waters at the time of the attack. And whereas one crew member of the USS Pueblo was killed during the attack, and 80 crew members and 2 civilian oceanographers were captured and held for 11 months by the North Korean government. And whereas this marks the 53rd anniversary of North Korea's attack on the USS Pueblo and her crew, now therefore be it resolved by the Senate of the 73rd General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that we, that we, the members of General Assembly, recognize the bravery and sacrifice of the crew of the USS Pueblo. 2, that we take pride in the fact that the USS Pueblo bears the name of a city and county in Colorado, and therefore the citizens of Colorado should be aware of the incident that occurred within the USS Pueblo 53 years ago. 3, that we continue to call for Kim Jong-un and the North Korean government to return the USS Pueblo to the people of the United States. And 4, that we hereby designate January 23rd of each year as USS Pueblo Day, a day to remember and honor the brave crew of the USS Pueblo.
Having no further discussion, the motion before the body is the passage of Senate Joint Resolution 013. Are there any no votes? With 35 aye votes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, Senate Joint Resolution 013 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senator Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request this morning's Senate roll call be used to add as co-sponsors to the resolution.
Seeing no objection, the current roll call will be added as co-sponsors on Senate Joint Resolution 013. Will the clerk please read the title of Senate Joint Resolution 015?
Senate Joint Resolution 15 by Senators Rodriguez and Priola and Representatives Valdez A. and Holturf concerning recognition of the contributions of Latina and Latino veterans.
Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move Senate Joint Resolution 21-015 and be read in its entirety, selected portions.
Will the clerk please read selected portions of Senate Joint Resolution 015?
Senate Joint Resolution 15 by Senators Rodriguez and Priola and Representatives Valdez A. and Holtorf concerning recognition of the contribution of Latina and Latino veterans. Whereas Latino individuals have fought in support of the United States and the cause of freedom in every American conflict since the American Revolution, when Colonel Bernardo de Galvez, the Spanish governor of the Louisiana Territories, and his men assisted General George Washington and the Continental Army in defeating the British forces that were advancing into the then southwestern U.S. territories. And whereas despite 150 years of fighting with distinction in support of the United States, it was not until World War II that Latino service members became a truly forceful presence. It is estimated that nearly 500,000 Latino Americans, often the children of immigrants who entered the United States in previous decades, fought for the cause and freedom in that war, including the 158th Regimental Combat Team and the 141st Infantry Regiment, which consisted of all Spanish-speaking soldiers. And whereas in total, 61 Latino veterans have been awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for their service in the United States Armed Forces, and whereas more than 156,000 Latino service members are currently active duty members of the Armed Forces, and more than 1.2 million Latino veterans call the United States home, now therefore be resolved by the Senate of the 73rd General Assembly of the State of Colorado, the House of Representatives concurring herein, that we, the members of the General Assembly, recognize and commend the efforts and sacrifice of the millions of Latino men and women who have served the cause of freedom in and alongside armed forces of the United States.
Having no further discussion, the motion before the body is the passage of Senate Joint Resolution 015. Are there any no votes? With a vote of 35 ayes, 0 noes, 0 absent, and 0 excused, Senate Joint Resolution 015 is passed. Co-sponsors, Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the current roll call be added as co-sponsors.
Seeing no objection, the current roll call will be added as co-sponsors on Senate Joint Resolution 015. Senator Priola.
Thank you, Mr. President. And while I'm up here, I'd like to recognize or have the General Assembly recognize fellow citizens of my part of the state. First is Rudy Padilla, graduated from Brighton High School, 1968, and entered the Navy where he served 6 years. He went to boot camp, San Diego Electrical School in San Francisco. He served on the ship USS William Wood, which is DD 715 destroyer. He spent 4 years on that ship and it took him to the Mediterranean twice and the Caribbean islands. He also served on the USS Cleveland, which was LPD-7, which headed to Vietnam. He served an extended tour from 1972 to 1974 on that ship off the coast of Vietnam. When asked what he felt about the time in the service, he said, "It was a wonderful 6 years and was full of gratitude for his experience and opportunity to serve his country and see the world." Also, Joe Martinez was a sergeant in the Marine Corps who is currently serving as the Weld County Deputy Sheriff. He graduated from Greeley West High School. One day in 1996, he decided to look into the Marine Corps because the recruitment center was next to the King Soopers he worked at. He signed on, and 3 months later, he was deployed. He served at Camp Pendleton and Camp Lejeune on opposite coasts of each other. In 2003, he went to Kuwait, and in 2005, he served in Fallujah. In 2007, he became a reservist at Buckley Air Force Base. He shared that he had great pleasure in his service. He made good friends and developed a deep sense of national pride because of his experience in his service. I would like to thank both of these men, as well as our president, who you can read about his experience in the Colorado politics, for their service to our great nation. Thank you.
Members, you may be seated, and we will now entertain discussion on any of the resolutions that were just passed. Senator Fields is recognized.
Good morning, Mr. President and colleagues. I first of all want to thank my good colleague from Arapahoe County. I know we can't use names, but I'm gonna say, JB, I let you stand up here by yourself because we're using a little different protocol that we normally have as it relates to being efficient and timely in how we celebrate our tributes and our contribution to those who have served our country. But there's some things that require us to pay attention to. My dad was a soldier, and my mom was a military wife. My dad served 30 years in the armed forces. And it wasn't shrunk down to 5 minutes. It was a lifetime. And my dad never told me his story in reference to what it was like to serve in combat. He served in Korea, and he also served in Vietnam, T-Tours. And he never told me his story. But one time, I saw his feet. And when you're a soldier and you have to wear combat boots, in the midst of war, there's no time for a pedicure. My dad, his feet, the struggles that it takes to be a soldier, takes an awesome toll on so many different levels. And being an only child, I never really focused on the experience and the trauma of what it's like to be a soldier. So today, I want to thank all soldiers, all military people who have defended our country. My dad did that for his whole life. And the memory I have for that, I look at his feet. He was a foot soldier. So I tried to encourage him to get a pedicure. Let's do whatever we can for your feet. He was a black man. So encouraging him to go to a spa was just not acceptable in his view. He was not going to do it. And when I asked him to tell me his story of what it was like to experience war in Vietnam, not once, twice, and plus Korea, he would not share it with me. Which is my greatest regret. I don't know my dad's story as it relates to participating in war. But I do know when he came back from Vietnam, his contribution to our nation was not celebrated. It was not acknowledged. And I did not know how to deal with that. Because we had social unrest in society, and then my dad comes home with his legs and his arms and his sight. He came back full body. And because of his contributions, it wasn't celebrated back then. So, Dad, I want you to know that I'm telling you right now, welcome home. If you didn't get celebrated when you came back, I'm celebrating you right now. Welcome home. My dad is in glory right now, and he died because of complications of Agent Orange. Pancreatic cancer. But he came home. But he never told me his story. I didn't even know that he had contact with Agent Orange until I read his death certificate. It doesn't matter what force you're in, Air Force, Marine, Army. Welcome home. You defended our democracy and our freedom. And for that, I am forever grateful. And to my mom, a military wife. When I think about the upbringing that she gave me, she never exposed me to the stress of having her husband in war. We go have ice cream. She paid the bills. She did what she had to do. We would go from base to base to base. She would hang up the pictures, put up curtains. But we don't talk about the military wife. My mom never told me her story either. I can tell you what the military did for me. It transformed our lives. My dad joined the military because he felt like that was going to give him access to the American dream. Yes, he was able to take advantage of the GI Bill. We were able to purchase a home. And in the long run, I was able to be a first generation, college generation student. My mom and dad didn't go to college, but they were looking ahead and they were thinking about my future. So Mom and Dad, and all those who serve in the military, thank you. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
Members, before we proceed, just to clarify the record, both sides have agreed to 30 minutes, and this is your chamber, so if we decide to go further, we can do that. I do not want to stifle anyone's ability to speak on all these important resolutions, but there was ample time to raise objection prior to today. Senator Lundin.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I rise to speak briefly about the Missing in Action Prisoner of War resolution and more broadly to the cause of the day, appreciation for our military. Few things are as difficult for the human heart and the human mind to deal with as the unknown. Today, 1,584 families in America, 24 families in Colorado don't know what may have happened to a member of their family who was serving. You've all seen the black flag, the prisoner of war, missing in action, POW/MIA flag. I was on my Harley this weekend and I saw it a lot this weekend. On the flag it says, "You are not forgotten." Those are the words on that POW/MIA flag. We choose not to forget and instead to honor those brave Americans who served, some of whom made the ultimate sacrifice, not for glory, but for love. The scripture says in John 15:13, "Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends." Those who went missing or were captured were ready, and some did lay down their lives, not for glory. If you go to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, and that 1,584 families with missing members, that's since World War II. The Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, which was founded following World War I, the inscription on that tomb says, "The unknown American warrior represents no section, no creed, or race in the late war, but typifies the soul of America and the supreme sacrifice of her heroic deed." We can learn a lot from that. E pluribus unum, from many one, especially typified in those who fight and put their lives on the line on behalf of us. Why? For love. America is great because of the soul of America. It is great. That soul pushed us to fight for freedom almost 250 years ago, the Revolutionary War, and to fight against tyranny 80 years ago in World War II. And today, we each fight in our own way for what is right, and for love, I would argue, not for glory, but love of our country and our neighbor. Today, we honor those who served, many who gave on behalf of us their last full measure of devotion. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Liston.
Thank you. Mr. President, fellow senators, distinguished guests, and especially any World War II veterans, it is my great honor to speak on behalf of the World War II veterans today, or as they are commonly known as the greatest generation, which they are. It is impossible to pay homage and tribute to the some 15 million men and women who fought, died, bled, and sacrificed in such a short time today. The enormity and scope of where they served is mind-boggling. Americans have little understanding of where our soldiers, sailors, and airmen served, from the steamy jungles of New Guinea, Burma, India, and throughout the islands of the South Pacific, and the frigid islands of Alaska, and to the extreme heat and dust of North Africa. Young men fought to save democracy in free, conquered countries from the heels of Nazi Germany and Japanese imperialism. Our country was the arsenal of democracy, and our men in uniform were largely responsible for liberating Western Europe from Nazi oppression. While my father was a B-24 pilot in the South Pacific, whose flight jacket I'm wearing, I want to share a personal story of a young man who went ashore in Europe at a pivotal point in time. Vic Fast was 19 years old when he was at the tip of the spear when he and his infantry unit went ashore at Omaha Beach, June 6, 1944, at 6:30 in the morning. Despite withering fire from entrenched German gun positions, Sergeant Fast jumped out of his landing craft in over 12 feet of water, swam or crawled ashore, and fought his way up the bluffs on Normandy. At Omaha Beach alone, just for your reference, over 1,500 Americans died at Omaha Beach alone. And that was just the beginning. Sergeant Fast and his comrades continued their fight throughout Europe to liberate Europe with little or no breaks. He was wounded twice over the course of his action. And they continued on and they liberated France, Belgium, and on into Germany. I was very fortunate to know Vic Fast for over 20 years. He was humble and modest, like so many of the greatest generation. We really could all learn something from people like Vic Fast. He and the men and women of World War II were truly, they saved our great country, and we could learn something from them today. I tell you of this vignette about one young man who gave his all, who asked for little from his country, and came home and went about his business, starting his life anew in the country that he loved. Vic returned to Normandy to pay homage and tribute to his fellow soldiers and his buddies who never came home. Vic died in 2009 at 86. Thank you, and God bless all the Vic Fasts of the greatest generation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President and colleagues, for allowing this space today to do what I think is one of the actually more important things that we do in traditions and in norms in this chamber, and that's to pause and reflect of the importance of the service of those who served in the military. I always think of my grandfather on this day, of course. I think many of us use this time to hold those that we know personally in our hearts and in our souls and reflect on their contributions to us personally and to our great nation. But it is my distinct honor this year to be able to carry the resolution honoring Gold Star families, where we pause those families that have given the most of great luck. My grandfather returned from the South Pacific after training in Camp Hale and was a career military man. But all families don't get to bring their families, all families don't get to bring their family members home to continue the life that they had before service may have taken them away. A Gold Star family is the immediate family member who has had someone die while serving in a time of conflict. This practice began in World War I, when military families would fly a flag with a blue star for every family member serving in armed forces. This was a way for families to show the level of sacrifice and commitment their family was already making in defense of our great country and freedom. Those stars were replaced with a gold star if a life was lost in a time of conflict. And this was such a clarion message for communities to know that a family had paid the ultimate price in the name of freedom. Being a Gold Star family is an honor that I don't think any family ever wants. But I hope that this resolution today is symbolic in the same way that that gold star and that blue star was a symbol. I hope this resolution is a symbol that your sacrifice is acknowledged and respected. And also that, as we know, that no service member ever serves alone, because every service member had a family behind them. I hope that this resolution shows that no Gold Star family stands alone, and that every day you have the profound gratitude and respect of the General Assembly.
Senator Kirkmeyer. Senator Woodward.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm humbled to stand before the people of Colorado today to honor not only those who have served, but also those who have been left behind. Colorado currently has over 250 Gold Star families who have paid the ultimate sacrifice for their country. Last fall, Colorado dedicated the Gold Star Families Memorial Monument at the Colorado Freedom Memorial in Aurora. If you visit, you'll find a dark slab of granite cut vertically with inspiring engravings of patriotism and honor. But what is most striking is the silhouette of a soldier standing at attention with his saluting hand raised to his head. That hole in the granite where a soldier should be is like the hole in the hearts of those left behind. When somebody's killed in action, their battle may have ended on the field, but their family's battles are just beginning, and they will continue for the rest of their lives with deep pain and loss. Those are the words of Rick Crandall, president of the Colorado Freedom Memorial Foundation. There is an incredible story for each and every one of the 6,200 Colorado soldiers who have fought and died for this country since we became a state. While they had many ranks and titles on their battlefield, back home, those brave soldiers in uniforms had other titles, like mom and dad, brother and sister, son and daughter. From time to time, it is important for all of us to stop for moments like this. We must recognize and not take for granted the lives and unthinkable hardships that it took to create the opportunity, prosperity, and liberty that we enjoy. It is our duty to honor their fight for liberty by preserving it and teaching it to our kids. To every active military member, veteran, and Gold Star family, we will never forget.
Senator Kirkmeyer.
Thank you, Madam President. I stand here to recognize the veterans of World War II who gave something of themselves to protect each and every one of us to do what needed to be done. My dad, an Army veteran, was part of the 99th Infantry Division. The nickname for their division was the Checkerboard Division. Because they were so young and inexperienced in battle, a journalist called them the Battle Babies. In fact, there have been movies made about the 99th Infantry Division. The Battle Babies played a strategic role in the Battle of the Bulge, where they held fast on the northern shoulder of the German advance, refusing them access to the vital northern road network that led into Belgium. My dad was shot during the Battle of the Bulge, and he received a Purple Heart. And later, when he returned to his division, he was with them throughout their march across Germany, when they liberated 3 labor camps and 1 concentration camp near Dachau, Germany. When the future hung in the balance, they stood on the edge of tyranny and devastation. Today, I offer a tribute to the physical and moral courage that made heroes out of city boys and farm boys, just like my dad.
Senator Gonzalez.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, I just want to rise in support of all of the resolutions that have been offered this morning. I want to say que vivan los veteranos. I want to thank all veterans for their service. And I also just want to shout out some of the amazing work that happens in my communities. In my community, in Senate District 34, North, West, and downtown Denver. This is not past tense work. This is present tense work that is happening in my district, in y'all's district, across this state on a daily basis. VFW Post 1 was founded right here in the Colorado State Capitol in 1899. And if y'all go to the south entrance of the state capitol, you'll see a plaque commemorating its first meeting. But they continue to meet and provide services and community to veteranos across the metro area, and they meet right on Santa Fe Drive. Just a couple of blocks north, the Bill Daniels Veteran Service Center supports 800 veterans a month and really hones in on supporting veterans experiencing homelessness. And all of these important words that we are sharing today, I think are beautiful and powerful, and yet we still also have societal structural issues to address, because 9% of Coloradans experiencing homelessness are veterans. We got work to do, y'all. And then the last thing that I'll just name is the Mile High American GI Forum, located over at 17th and Federal. Chartered in 1965, they continue to provide space for community to gather, for Latino veterans to continue their service and do good work on behalf of all of the people of Colorado. This present tense work, I think, underscores all of the work that we appreciate and are supportive of here in the General Assembly, certainly here in the Senate. And I think that if you were to ask every single one of the 35 of us in this chamber, you would also hear and learn about, in every single one of your respective Senate districts, amazing work happening by everyday Coloradans who continue to serve, who continue to step up and do good work on the betterment of their communities. And so to all the veteranos, I just want to say my appreciation, my gratitude, and my thanks.
Senator Quorum.
Thank you, Madam President. I understand we're on a very short time schedule, and but I've got to say that I'm here to talk about Vietnam. I am of that era. I am not a Vietnam veteran. But, you know, in that war, we lost 58,000. 2.7 million Americans served. And I'm not very good about using hyphens, because they were Americans. They all bled red, and they fought for their country. We're in a time now that we tend to rewrite history. And let me tell you about the history of Vietnam. Although I was not a veteran, I witnessed it. Our servicemen and women came home and were treated with the greatest disrespect of any time in our nation. And those veterans today are still paying that price. When you see someone that served in Vietnam, please honor them, because frankly, that is the only way they are going to heal. And they paid the price. They deserve your honor and respect. Thank you.
Senator Simpson.
Thank you, Madam President. Take the opportunity this morning to talk a little more about the USS Pueblo. Today we convene to express our appreciation for our country's military veterans. My remarks focus on the USS Pueblo, one of only a few American ships to have been captured since the wars in Tripoli, and the only ship belonging to the U.S. Navy which is still on the active commission roster and is currently being held captive by a foreign state. The USS Pueblo was named after the city of Pueblo, Colorado, our state's 9th most populous city. Among the 83 crew members aboard the Pueblo more than 50 years ago was Quartermaster 3rd Class Alvin H. Plucker, a native of LaSalle, Colorado. On January 23, 1968, Quartermaster Plucker, together with the USS Pueblo crew, under the direction of Commander Lloyd M. Boucher, sailed the USS Pueblo in international waters outside of North Korea when the ship was ambushed by the North Korean military. For 2 hours, the USS Pueblo and its crew bravely fended off nautical and aerial attacks from the North Korean military while destroying sensitive intelligence information on board the ship. One crew member, Petty Officer Dwayne Hedges, was killed in this firefight with the North Koreans. The rest, all captured men, were held captive for 335 days. Not surprisingly, the Pueblo incident sparked a major international crisis, bringing Asia to the brink of nuclear conflict. Ultimately, the crew was released 11 months after their initial capture, just in time for Christmas. But their vessel, the USS Pueblo, stayed behind. Since then, the 177-foot ship has been docked in Pyongyang, where the North Korean government has turned it into a tourist attraction. In 1968 and 69, the United States recognized the potential danger of escalating the issue with North Korea. Indeed, many feared a strong show of force on the part of the United States may risk reigniting the Korean War or could trigger a nuclear showdown with the then existing Soviet Union. But as the United States enters talks with North Korea, present tense, it's important that the actions of the North Korean government in January of 1968, the sacrifice of Petty Officer Dwayne Hodges, and the sacrifices of the USS Pueblo crew are never forgotten. Thank you, colleagues. I wanted to also take the opportunity to highlight, my personal connections. My neighbor, Major Paul Weber, was shot down in Desert Storm and remains in MIA out of that storm. And I bless his mom and dad who dealt with that for 20 years. They both passed away 2 years ago. I suspect now they know what's happened to their son, Paul Weaver. I'm reminded routinely of my time at the Air Force Academy at the preparatory school. My commander was Colonel Ben Pollard, who was a Vietnam War veteran, a POW. He shared his experiences with the classmates of mine at the prep school. Really was an inspiration and a reminder of the testimony of the human spirit. And then lastly, both of my grandfathers were World War II veterans. My grandfather, Glenn Sheely, was an enlisted man in the U.S. Navy, and my other grandfather, Lloyd Jack Simpson, was an enlisted man in the U.S. Army. Bless them both, and thank you all for your service, past and present.
Senator Lee.
Thank you, Madam President. We all come down to honor our veterans every year. It is one of the things that we do in unity and solidarity to appreciate and honor the people who have served our countries. I too, like some of you, are the offspring of veterans. Both of my parents served in World War II. They were both in the OSS, the predecessor of the CIA. But I come down here because I think it's important for us to recognize that having resolutions, and I support all these resolutions, is one thing, but it's important to do something concrete for our veterans. I was inspired by hearing the senator from Denver saying that 9% of homeless people are veterans. we are in a position to help these people. Here's another shocking statistic for you. 10% of the people in the Department of Corrections, 1,700, are veterans. I would suggest that many of the veterans who are in the Department of Corrections suffer from PTSD, from traumatic brain injuries, from scars that are not visible. When we consider legislation that we are voting on in this body, we should honor our veterans. We've set up veterans trauma courts to provide wraparound services for veterans, many of whom are struggling with substance abuse, with mental health crises brought on by their dedicated, committed service to our country. We need to think of our veterans when we're passing legislation to help them transition from their military service back into their communities. And we need to help our veterans when we're passing criminal justice legislation, because a disproportionate amount of our people in the Department of Corrections are veterans who have served honorably and nobly on behalf of our country. When I was in the House, the representative from Salida would stand up at the end of a lot of resolutions and say, okay, we've heard the sentiments. What are you going to do about it? Thank you. I stand in support of the resolutions, and I look forward to passing legislation to help honor our veterans. Thank you.
Minority Leader Holbert.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you especially to our guests here today, Gold Star families, those of you who have lost a loved one in the defense of our country. I cannot express adequately with words. I point often on this day each year and in other moments where it's appropriate that President Lincoln offered advice to us all at Gettysburg when he reminded us that words cannot add or detract from the sacrifices that these men and women have made. Those are real, and we cannot make those better or honor them more with our mere words. I also remember the advice of former Senator David Ballmer, who served, and he encouraged those of us who have not to be careful with the words, "thank you for your service," because that can be somewhat dismissive. It can become superficial. Have a nice day. When we say thank you for your service to people who have been in the freezing cold and the blazing hot, have been in the worst possible situations and seen fellow service men and women slaughtered, die in great pain, we can't understand what it means to serve. People like me who haven't. From that perspective, I wanted to say thank you to one family in the community where the two of us from Douglas County reside. A very great man who I count as a friend passed away last year because of COVID. U.S. Army Colonel, retired, Lindy Blackburn, was a graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point. Lindy was an activist, a volunteer for the Douglas County Republican Party. And every year on Memorial Day, the people of Parker would gather at a cemetery that's there on a little hill in Parker, and it's been there since Colorado was a territory. And Colonel Blackburn would lead our Memorial Day ceremony, where each branch of the military was honored and names were read off of men and women from Parker who had given their life. But now, if we have a Memorial Day celebration this year in Parker, Colonel Blackburn won't be with us. To his wife and their family, Tanny, Thank you for his service. Thank you for his example. He was a leader in a community. He was a veteran, and I was proud to call him my friend. Thank you, Madam President.
President Garcia.
Thank you, Madam President. Good morning, members. It's an honor to be here with all of you to commemorate Military Appreciation Day. I don't often come to the well to make remarks, but this is a tradition that is particularly near and dear to me. As a veteran of the United States Marine Corps who served in Iraq in 2003 as a mortuary affairs specialist, as a proud father of a son who is serving at the United States Air Force Academy, and as a brother to 2 Marines who served in Iraq and Afghanistan, our family service to our nation will always be one of the greatest honor of my life. And I cannot put into words how grateful I am for the lessons I learned in the United States Marine Corps. It taught me what it was to serve with a purpose greater than that of your own. That's why military appreciation is so important to me and for all of us to recognize each year. What we do here in this chamber would be impossible without the service of our members who serve abroad and their families. They make so many sacrifices, some visible and some invisible, all in the name of protecting us. And sadly, many of our brothers and sisters make the ultimate sacrifice and don't get to return home to enjoy the way of life that they have fought so hard to defend. Each year, we have the privilege to honor our military community and the countless numbers of veterans from all walks of life who've answered our nation's call. And as a senator from Pueblo, home of the heroes, I have introduced each year a resolution calling for the return of the USS Pueblo, the naval intelligence ship that was attacked and captured in international waters over 50 years ago. The passion I have for this resolution is not just because it's named after our hometown, but as a Marine veteran, I believe that it is important that we recognize the crew of the USS Pueblo and that they had to endure for the 11 months that they were held captive, and to recognize the Marine who was killed during the attack. Finally, I know that a single day at the Capitol is not enough to truly show the depth and gratitude that we have for our veterans and their family members, but rather it should happen year-round. But today is an important opportunity to pause and reflect on what it takes to ensure that we can stand here together so that we can honor the stories, the history, and the immeasurable sacrifices made on behalf of those who serve. Thank you, members, for taking the time for such an important tradition, and thank you to everyone who has wore our nation's uniform. I'll close by sharing a word that I'm particularly fond of as a Marine, a word that represents all military members, and it is Semper Fidelis, always faithful.
The Senate will stand in a brief recess.